right on this side, and his leg wouldn't even work.
I guess not. Okay, here's the order with the County Board of Zoning Appeals. Having a quorum, we'll proceed. I would ask if you would stand with me for the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance, please. God, we're so thankful for the blessings that you bestow upon us in our life. We're so thankful that we get to live here in Jefferson County and enjoy the benefits of good friends and good neighbors. We ask you continue to be with us, we prosper and grow, and lead and guide and direct us in all that we do. We ask all these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would ask the members if they had an opportunity to review the minutes from the past meeting. Any changes or corrections, please note. Otherwise, I'm looking for approval. Got a proper motion? And second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. I don't think I have anything here for citizens input for BZA. So looks like everything's planning. Okay, so we'll move to the first item, which is a variance of a side setback of 5.5 feet for a new garage that's been constructed at 113 Raspberry Drive, New Market, Berry Ridge, lot number 99 by David and Ashley Tharp. Mr. Tharp?
Yes, sir.
State your name and address, please.
David Tharp, 113 Raspberry Drive, New Market.
Okay.
He had to go back and get a survey, if y'all remember, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
He wanted to get surveys to make sure exactly how much of a variance he needed.
So here's my question, Mr. Tharp.
Yes, sir.
Other than the fact that you've already built the garage, okay, so why else do you need the variance?
Because I got someone to come here. I guess somebody up above me called in,
Okay,
and I guess that's the reason. I built a carport, and that's what it stated on all my paperwork was carport. And I didn't realize I had to get a permit. And come to find out, here in Jeff County, if it's fully enclosed, it's considered a garage, not a carport. And then I found out that it still had to meet the setbacks. I didn't realize I was the zone that I was in. And
okay.
He's in R1 there.
He's R1, okay.
it was inside my fence, and I didn't realize since where my fence was built, I built it off my fence, and I thought I was in the clear, but
So if you had known where the setbacks were, you could have built in the setbacks,
no, sir.
okay?
I've got, behind my house is the water, I guess the water drain, where water drains from the subdivision. And if I go I get the back and I get the front, I just can't get the one side because of a deck that's built there.
So you're saying there's a drainage easement that runs through your property for the subdivision?
I'm assuming because it's a pretty massive hill and I can see where the water is.
It's behind this house, it's just a drop off of the hill. Back in the day when they developed that, on top of the hill, several houses behind him. So I guess you do get drainage.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
No doubt about that.
So was there any way to have placed this on the opposite side of the house over there, or do you have field line septic area in there?
Not over there, but no, sir, because there's not enough room. There wasn't enough room on that side of the house.
Is your drain field on the other side?
It's right in front, so
Right.
if I was to build a driveway, it'd mess with the drain field that comes in.
Now, those are high-acre lots down there. So you got much room to work with.
Okay. So basically, you need this variance so that you can actually go get a building permit, correct?
Yes, sir.
Questions for Mr. Tharp? So he can go and get his building permit.
I didn't realize I
I
needed.
know it. Well, that's just, yeah, so basically what it is, there's actually two violations here. One is he's built and he's encroached over the setback line, and the other is not with this commission, but he failed to get a building permit. So there's actually two items here that are into play. So in order for him to get a building permit, he's gonna have to have a variance from us stating that where the location of this garage is okay, and in which case then they'll issue him a building permit. I know that makes, well, he just mentioned that. He said no.
Whenever,
Well,
When
you
you
got a
look-
permit for a carport, correct? Or,
it didn't require a permit for the carport. When I
Okay.
looked online, it did not require, it didn't require a permit for the carport. And when I came in here, y'all said that anything that's enclosed has to be permitted and is considered a garage in the county of Jefferson.
but would you have carport if it had to meet the setbacks too, as well?
It would.
Well, they would, but I mean, Rob don't
Okay,
get permits for those.
okay. Because basically, you're only about 1.5 feet off the line, aren't you?
After the survey, yes. My neighbor had it surveyed, I guess, months ago. That's where I got the pictures from, is off her survey. And when I had it surveyed myself, the surveys were different between mine and hers.
Okay. In what aspect?
I was further off the line with her survey, and I'm closer with my survey.
Okay. All right. Any questions in regards to what the situation is?
By his neighbor's survey, he's all right?
No,
Still not right.
still not. Well, it just depends. Okay, so if we don't give him the variance, he's got it, he's basically encroached, okay, and he's in violation from that standpoint. It would be up to the county at that point in time what they determine to do.
Well, it has to be 7 feet off.
Well, 7 feet off the line. All I'm saying is that at that point in time, it depends if the county wanted to take action in that regards, they could, okay? We can't make him. We don't have that authority. All we can do is either say we're giving him a variance or not giving him a variance. That's all we can do.
And I've had no complaints of the garage being, or the building being there whatsoever from anybody. So, I mean, it's not like they're gonna, I don't see them calling anybody to tell me to move it. It's just, now that I know that I was in the wrong, I'm trying to make it all right.
I understand. Yes.
It's too steep in one area to,
Yeah, typically what we look at is that for us to grant these types of variances, that there needs to be some topographical issues involved here. And according to you, you've got a drainage ditch in the back as far as that goes. If you come a little bit further over, I don't know if it got you within the setbacks or not, per se, closer to your deck and pool there. You're telling me that you can't go the other side over there because you don't have room, because you can't get around your house there, is that correct?
Correct. The driveway that'd come up would be in the neighbor, like part of the neighbor's yard.
Oh,
There's-
okay.
There's like, the house pretty much goes straight to the property line.
Okay. Okay. So one thing that you consider is this. Let's say, for instance, the garage wasn't even there, and he was getting ready to build it. And he came to us and asked us for a variance at that point in time. He would have asked for the variance based upon topographical issues, possibly, if they existed as far as that goes. Which we have, for topographical issues, as far as that goes, we have done those variances. In this case here, it's like it's basically what you're doing is instead of asking for permission, your forgiveness. Yeah, that's what it boils down to. So, whatever you think.
I make a motion we grant the variance.
Okay. And we need to know, I want to put in here how much the variance is going to be. It's what, 7.5 foot?
7 feet.
So he needs a 5 foot variance. No, he needs a 6 foot variance.
Well, 5.5.
5.5, okay. So he needs a 5.5 foot variance.
Look like that's putting height on there.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's like,
okay. So is that your motion to grant him a 5.5 foot variance
Yes.
for his detached garage? Okay. So I got a proper motion on the floor and a second. Any other discussion? Okay. Being none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? I'm a nay on this one, right there. But it passes, and I guess you just need to go see Tim, and he'll get you some paperwork then.
yes, sir.
Well, it needs to drop.
Or see
Rob.
Rob, okay.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah.
I lost my agenda.
I didn't take it down.
No, oh, here it is, okay. All right, the next item up is a variance request for a garage to be placed in front and the left side of the existing house at 851 Nance Road, New Market by Sheldon and Casey White.
You have the maps there in front of the survey.
So, Are you Mr. White?
Yes, sir.
Could you just state your name and address, please?
Sheldon White, 851 Nance Road.
Okay. So, Mr. Nance, you want to explain to us why you're needing this variance?
Yes, sir. I was in here a month before last. Most of my land is reserved for future septic, and then the other portion of my land is water runoff from the property next to me. And so I was asking for a variance due to that, and the higher end of my land tends to be closer to the road than my home is.
Okay. So basically, do you understand what his variance consists of? He's not asking for setbacks. It looks like he's going to be within his setbacks, building setbacks. But the way our guidelines read there, when you build on a side yard there, then the front of your garage is supposed to be either equal with or behind the front part of your home. And in this case here, if you see that right there, that is not the case. Matter of fact, we have, we eliminate this on larger tracks.
Yeah, we should lift
We,
that down.
we should have.
Y'all had his septic permit 2 months ago, you need to see it again, there,
Okay.
definitely in the back, so got no room to put it.
So you're saying his septic system where it lays out in here is basically,
It's all in the back there. See here?
okay. All right. Everybody understand what his situation is and why he's asking for the variance? Any questions? That's it. He is. He's within his setbacks. It's just that the corner of his garage is basically closer to the road than his house is. So. And the reason he couldn't scoot it back more is that because that's where his septic system is located on his property.
Make a motion, we grant variance.
Okay, I have a proper motion to grant the variance for the garage to be located partially in front of the house on the street. And a second. Any other discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Hey, thank you, sir.
The other two items have been pulled, so I'd entertain a motion. That was our last two items. I'd entertain a motion for adjournment. Proper motion
I'll second.
and second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Having a quorum, I'm going to call the order of the Jefferson County Regional Planning Commission. I'd ask the members, if they've not had an opportunity to review the minutes from the past meeting, any changes or correction, please note. Otherwise, I'm looking for approval.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Got a proper motion?
Second.
And second. All right. Any other discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. I'm just going to do citizen input. We don't have much. All right. This brings us to the citizens' input. Here's what I have who's signed up. Let's see, first, I have Mr. Jim Fox.
Good evening.
If you state your name and address, Mr. Fox.
Yes. Jim Fox, 1909 Abilene Trail, Dandridge. This is referring to the Planning Commission this month, 2251 Jim Henry Road. ACA Planning Commission, the acting chairman, in regard to 2251 Jim Henry Road project, the church sheds, said that a stop work order had been issued and there were misconceptions about this project all along. He also stated they got permits and inspections and a cease and desist order was in place on this project. On this day that this was stated, a cease and desist order had not been done, nor it had been turned over to the county attorney. The acting commissioner knew or should have known that the statements he was making to the citizens in the gallery was not true. On August 12th, I sent an email to the zoning director and along with two commissioners of my concerns on why the sheds were still under construction and an explanation as to why they were still under construction. The commissioners agreed a cease and desist order should be ordered. The mayor was also later included in the email string and agreed that it should be turned over to the county attorney. I was not copied on any emails that the zoning director replied to. The director has stated directly to me on two separate occasions, on or about 9/6/24 and 9/11/24, that a cease and desist order was not ordered, nor was the county attorney involved. The acting commissioner spoke improperly at the meeting on the day that this was done, and that the citizens were overreacting. The zoning director has disregarded direction from the original planning commission and the mayor, and the zoning commissioner is willfully allowing Grace contractors to work on this property with impunity. The zoning director in his position, in knowingly allowing construction of the sheds aside from a septic survey without the proper permits and in violation of A1 zoning. This is a dereliction of his duty to his position and as the county as a whole. I feel that the acting commissioner should be disciplined or censored for giving false statements at the meeting, and that the zoning director should be removed from office for not upholding the codes and standards and laws of the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Marion Knight.
Hi, Marion Knight, 440 West Main Street in Dandridge. This is more of a generic request because I've been at several meetings lately that involved controversial items that got added to the agenda via the suspension of Robert's rules. So I'm asking this board to please not add anything to the agenda, especially if it's a controversial item in going forward, starting today, by suspending Robert's rules. I'm just asking that any items that you guys vote on should be advertised in the newspaper first, especially if they're controversial. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. William Villars.
I'm Bill Villers, and I'm speaking for my family and concerned residents who reside at 2202 Arrowhead Drive. The subjects are the sheds, camps, cabins, or whatever they are now at 2251 Jim Henry Road. According to officials, Grace asked for permits to build 2 sheds for agricultural use. Instead, they quickly built 2 3,000-square-foot buildings complete with bunk beds. Grace should have known how to obtain proper zoning, building, and environmental permits, codes, and inspection schedules. They've been constructing habitable buildings in Tennessee for over 10 years. They intended all along to use sheds for up to 100-plus adolescent camp attendees, reference the July 23rd BZA meeting. On July 23rd, BZA confirmed that camps are not allowed in A1. Please refer to the August 27th BZA PC meeting and audio tape. Many residents explained the damage an A1 to RR zone change would cause to the community and county. Please finalize the no RR decision and communicate to concerned residents. Nobody can know how sheds or additional buildings will even be used if approved in A1. Grace's credibility was tarnished during the building permit application process. Grace had used existing residents for camps. Grace planned to use sheds for camps all along, beginning June 3rd, evidently without meeting proper codes or including in safety codes, and again, reference July 23rd meeting. At the end of the August 27th BZA PC meeting, the acting chair said stop work and cease and desist orders had been issued. The county attorney is handling the issue. Sheds are being overblown due to misconception. Following the meeting, residents confirmed no stop work or cease and desist order had issued. The county attorney didn't even know about the Grace sheds. Detrimental consequences and precedents will be set if occupancy is allowed for sheds, even in A1. For example, apply for sheds, build what you want. County must approve the occupancy or be sued due to the precedent.
Mr. Flowers, about one more minute.
One more minute?
About 30 more seconds, sir.
Thank you. Given all the code violations, have any enforcement actions been taken to protect residents in the county from serious detrimental consequences or precedents that we have alerted you to? Due to the BZA's dismissive overblown comment to residents, multiple residents are now filing official county complaint forms trying to protect the community and beautiful county. Next steps, written and TV
Thank you,
press.
sir. Time's up.
I'd like to get finished. You can wrap it up.
No.
You have much more on there?
No,
He had 3 minutes.
I'd like
It's fair for him to, anybody
I would
else?
like to hear him finish.
Chairman's choice.
Yeah, 3 minutes. Thank you.
so I can't finish the 3 points.
Well, I'm trying to keep it to 3 minutes fair for everybody, okay?
One commissioner just asked if you could proceed.
I know. But we didn't ask for that, we didn't offer that to any others, okay?
Well, hardly anybody's spoken so far, but thank you.
All right. Next is Kathleen Villars.
Make the points that I couldn't.
Kathleen Villers, 2202 Arrowhead Drive. I'm here to talk about the sheds and zoning. Key points. 1, a stop work order should have been issued no later than July 23rd, 2024. Carefully listening to the video from the July 23rd meeting, Jorge Amet said each year more kids coming. We need a building, something, shed to sleep in. Camp is June 3rd. He said he was going to build between April and June structures for kids to sleep inside. Sadly, no work order, no cease and desist, or contact with the attorney occurred after this meeting. 2, there should be no zoning change from A1 to RR because of many detrimental consequences, and it would set precedent. At the August 27th meeting, numerous people spoke about concerns for sheds and in opposition to rezoning from A1 to RR. Near the end of the August 27 meeting, at the 3-hour, 6-minute mark, the acting chair said a stop work order had been issued, said this twice, a cease and desist placed, and the sheds had been referred to the attorney. The acting chair also said there were misconceptions and sheds being blown out of proportion. Sadly, we found out about September 11th that there was no stop work order, no cease and desist, and the attorney was not aware of the situation. This is extremely disappointing. 3, what will the buildings be used for? A church camp or any other camp is not allowed at A1. Enforcement of this needs to be placed in writing in the zoning codes and funded enforcement resources in place to protect our citizens and county. Why? Grace Contractors just cleared most of the remaining trees, looking to increase the available septic field. Also, I'm concerned after listening about a comment made by the builder. Jorge Amet said, "Get soil sample done with my friend, Grant Dunn." Does this comment about friendship suggest any favoritism? I hope not. Additionally, what are the buildings going to be approved for? What if they're approved as residences? Let's say the property is subdivided and each building is approved as a 2, 3, or even 4-bedroom residence. So we asked, how many people can sleep in a bedroom? 2, 4, 8, 12, maybe more. No answer could be given. What would stop Grace from having 100+ 13 to 19-year-olds sleeping over like their original plans? What would stop Grace from skirting any requirements for gathering of this size? Finally, 2 months have passed. No action's been taken against the builder of the sheds. To have their voices heard, many concerned citizens have submitted official complaint forms. We understand to date that at least 15, perhaps 16 or more have been submitted, highlighting concerns and asking the county to take action. In conclusion, I close with this. Please take action. Issue a stop work order. Get the attorney involved. Publicly state that the parcel will not be rezoned from A1 to RR, and address in writing zoning issues. Thank you.
Thank you. That being all, we will proceed to new business. The first item is a rezoning request from A1 to C2 for property at Deep Springs Road, Danridge, 1 acre portion of Lot 2 of the Crockett Black Survey by Nicholas and Breckland Sample. I'll read your notes on this. So.
These guys have a well digging
Yes, sir.
outfit, and they need a place. They bought the property, and they don't want all of it rezoned, just enough where they can park their equipment. And I'll let you add anything else
That-
to it.
that's
You wanna
pretty
do about
much-
an acre, right?
Yeah, about an acre, and that's pretty much we seen a place to park our trucks.
And I told them it's only like 3 parcels from the truck stop. So I didn't know how y'all feel about it, but it's pretty close to commercial property there. And I'm not sure, Terry, maybe you'll remember, is that gonna be part of the growth boundary? I'm not,
It possibly, until it's not finalized, but it
I know, but I
possibly
mean, I
could
can't
be.
remember if it's gonna be that far down. I've not seen the map in a while, but I couldn't remember.
I don't,
If it ever, I mean, if it's
yeah,
possible.
I don't remember, I just don't remember it.
I don't either. But it's not right now.
Okay. Okay. So basically what you're saying is that that within, this property was within, how far of existing C2?
Well, it's like 3 parcels from it,
Okay.
you can see on the map there. And the acre part, have you got a copy of it?
Well, I'm looking.
Send it in your packet. It's in the packet. Here. I don't know if you
Okay. There.
See
I
it
had that.
So they own that whole parcel where we got it colored in for the acre.
Right here. Okay. I don't remember if the growth boundary might take it in, but I'm not 100% sure.
I was thinking about that today, but I ain't seen it.
Okay. So we got C2 here.
The other C2 you see are the truck stops. One of them's on the agenda tonight. And the other one's a Speedway and, what is it? Love's, yeah.
Okay.
On the other side of the interstate.
I think that is going to be in the growth boundary.
It'll be close to the,
I think it will. If it passes. Okay. Did we not? Okay. So what, yeah, everybody understand what he's looking for? He owns a 12-acre tract. He'd like to rezone 1 acre of that tract to C2 for his business. This would merely be a recommendation from us to County Commission, if you so desire.
If they just take it into the regional planning, I think that exit will boom someday. There'll be a lot more commercial.
Just 1 acre?
That's all he's
That's
requesting.
all they're needing.
Just because that's the minimum size, right? We don't even need that much. We need, it's enough to park 2 trucks and storage shed.
I make a motion we rezone.
You make a motion to recommend to rezone. I got a proper motion for a recommendation to the County Commission to rezone this piece of parcel from A1 to C2.
Second.
And a second. Now, any other discussion before we vote? Everybody understand what we're voting on? This is just merely a recommendation from us to County Commission to rezone this piece of property. Being no other, yes,
I have a comment.
okay, I'm sorry.
I did give y'all written comments, and the one thing I'm concerned about is how are you gonna know the dimensions of the commercial area?
Yeah.
Because,
Well, what we usually do on that, Catherine, is after they rezone it, they do a survey. And there's no use paying for the survey if they're not gonna rezone it. That's what we've done over the
I don't
years.
know but just so there's a mechanism to do it.
That's what we've always.
Okay, so, but as far as the, it seems like the motion to rezone is just we're rezoning an acre of property.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Then
in
it's
terms
usually
of,
after county commission votes it in, then he'll do a survey of the acre. And you don't want them to pay for the survey until it's rezoned. That's what we've done for 25 years.
that's,
Well,
if that's adequate for you guys, that's fine with me, but
okay, did
you
you
do
have,
need to know where it is.
but did you have anything else besides that into this regards?
No, I think you need to be aware that everything, regardless of what they say, everything that's allowable in that zone district is allowable on the property.
It is.
Actually, I actually measured the distance from the intersection of I-40. It's 3,300 feet or 0.65 miles.
Yes.
And that, I look at that as a good thing from the standpoint of establishing a commercial core immediately adjacent the interstate. I do think long-term, in your long-range plan, you might want to determine how far down, is it
Deep
Deep
Springs.
Springs Road you want to encourage commercial development. And,
I can tell you this, the urban growth boundary expansion covers Deep Springs Road all the way down to Highway
and that would be
139.
for,
And that was just off of the road there for potential commercial use in the future,
It's going all the way to 139?
1 to 139. I
and-
mean, that may not pass, but, there was people down through there that, because that is a sort of a commercial viaduct between 139 and there, and so, I don't know.
I didn't realize it going all the way.
Well, you know, it's one of those things,
Probably to 2570 to 139, right?
no, it doesn't go all the way to 2570, no.
so it would be in Dandridge's
If-
urban growth area?
If it was passed, yes, it would be, yes.
Not that that makes any difference for, at this time.
Well, the map is out there in this time. I think the map's probably gonna be trimmed back to a certain extent. They just looked at this because there were people down here, there's other commercial properties down through here on Deep Springs Road, and they were looking at it, that it could eventually turn into a commercial corridor if it so happened, so, anyway. Okay, so we got a motion and a second on the table. Is there any other discussion? Being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so this will go in, forwarded on to county commission for their vote.
Do I have any responsibilities in my court that I need to get done at the moment?
I'm sorry, sir?
Do I have any responsibilities that I need to take care of at the moment for?
No, we're going to October meeting to the county commission.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay. The next item is a revised site plan for Shauna Reed, Pioneer Point, 1806 West Dumpling Valley Road, New Market.
You should have a small copy of the site plan, we got a bigger one you need. Rodney Martin, gave you that thing.
Ms. Reed, if you just state your name and address, please.
Shauna Reed, you want the venue address or my address?
Your address.
545 Glen Circle, Dandridge.
Okay. So I'm correct, we addressed this and,
Yeah, I wasn't here last month, but you.
no, but this was years ago, did we not address this years ago as part of this? We approved
She's
it.
adding to it.
She's adding to it, so this will be a revised site plan to, it's a revised site plan. Okay,
I think she had them drew in last month, and,
okay,
so she's hired Rodney, and he, you know, of course, he's a surveyor, and he put them on there, what she wanted to do.
okay,
What you all asked her to do last month.
all right. So everybody understand, this was already approved previously, and now she's wanting to add more buildings, so this is basically a revised site plan. That's what we have here. So would you explain to us the buildings that you're going to add?
It's just the 2 pavilions that are next to the snack bars.
Okay, so 2 pavilions.
Everything else on,
buildings are being added?
The 2 pavilions. There's 2 pavilions, you see that?
And a sound booth.
Yeah.
and then
So it's
the,
right sort of middle, in the middle of the property.
16 bar is already.
those are already there, yeah.
Okay.
And then the green room down there that
Oh, in the green room, you're adding the green room.
yeah. We have one that was approved, it's just really small, we're just trying to build a bigger one.
Okay. So everybody understand what the new improvements are, where they're located? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Ms. Baldwin had some comments.
Yes,
Could you walk us through those?
sure.
So looking on at a digital copy on my computer, and comparing it to your requirements for site plan approval, this is at a 1 inch to 100-foot scale. Your requirements are 1 inch to 20.
We just get that to be a mile.
Yeah, but the scale is still the same, no matter what.
Yeah, the scale doesn't change, but if this is an addition and you've already looked at it once, I was looking at it, I did not realize that it was an existing site. But no utilities were shown. I'm assuming that there's an on-site septic system?
No, Mr. Carter had come out and he approved the area where we want to build the green rooms to put a septic in, but didn't want to do that unless I got the building approved.
I mean, one thing I would think is that you don't want,
So you don't have restroom facilities here on the property now?
No, just porta johns.
Okay, so that's what that is for the that. Okay.
And I'm assuming that this has been in existence, so,
Yes,
as far as access drives, parking,
Yes, it's been there because they've had events here.
okay. Probably none of this is then applicable.
Okay, well, I would think that if the site plan is approved, it should be made subject to there being that Mr. Carter approving for your septic system, because that's what you're wanting there, okay? I don't think these buildings that's gonna be built, I don't think it's gonna affect the drainage on this property.
No.
There's just not enough rooftop there to make it, especially with how much acreage is in this track. So I don't know that the drainage is in, it's showing it's probably following down along the road and everything. Any other questions from your members in regards to what you're looking at there? Everybody understand what Catherine was talking about on our site plans, that it should be a code is 20 foot. And what that does is it's gonna make it bigger for us to see, okay? Yeah. Rodney probably knew that, probably just forgot.
Is that something we need to put in there, or we got it in there?
Well,
It's in your zoning ordinance now.
yeah, it's in there, so, okay. It's in there, yeah. See, it's funny because you put a graphic scale here, and then here it says it's not to scale.
I saw that.
So, okay. All right, so I think basically it probably meets the requirements for a revised other than the scale. So,
And Tom's gotta sign off on it?
he will before they're able to use that as restrooms.
Okay.
He'll have to do that, and you can make it subject to that if you so move, yes.
That's fine, yeah, he's already been out there, but yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay,
I'll move to approve subject to, Tom Carter approving the septic.
okay, we got a proper motion? And second, okay. Any other discussion? Everybody understand what the motion is? Yes, sir?
I'd like to add, if that's what we've got in our thing, she needs to go back and ask him for the right scale so that they have that on file.
Okay.
Yeah, Rodney, he works upstairs, so he can fix it.
That's
Okay.
not an issue. They just put the CAD in there and they just stretch it.
That's
Yeah.
an amendment? If you'll accept it.
I'll accept it.
Okay,
With your sugar, I mean,
Yeah.
like I say, if that's what's down, then that's what we need to do.
Yeah,
okay,
he'll fix it.
all right. Now everybody understand, amended motion being based upon approval from environmental, with Tom Carter's signature and a revised plat showing the scale of 1 inch equals 20 feet.
Using the guidelines for zoning.
So I got a motion and a second for that, proper motion. Any other discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is a revised site plan for Danridge Travel Center located at 1217 Deep Springs Road, Danridge, by BIR Transport.
Sonny Defoe, 1420 McCarty Road, Knoxville. And what y'all are looking at here, on the better place to look at it's on sheet 4, if you've got that one. But so this is the old TNR truck stop, and which we've already got approval on the improvements to the truck stop that he's doing, and he's wanting to add a couple. I'm gonna call it in an out parcel kind of deal, but two drive-throughs. I don't know, maybe a coffee, a donut, or who knows, something to eat, hopefully. But anyways, that's what he's wanting to do. We've got expanded parking over here to accommodate all these extra handicap spots, or excuse me, accessible parking spots. And you have a 2-lane drive-through for the QSRs, and there will be separate lanes for the drive-throughs, and then there's also an escape lane to get around in the case that a vehicle breaks down or there's an emergency.
Something that we requested last time. Let's see.
Utilities, those drawings don't have utilities on there. I've got a utility drawing for the water. The septic is private septic. He's got a drip field up on top of the ridge. I do have those if you need them. I don't remember if I submitted the septic with the last time when we approved this. I think I did.
Probably, here was the thing, was last time was this, is that this was approved based upon an extension of the water line for Shady Grove, so we have fire hydrant. And I was just looking to see, I didn't see one, that's why I was looking for the utility plan here to see if there was, a fire hydrant was still included in the plans. Because, it was my understanding that there was enough pressure there to do that. Do you know if has been submitted, to them, along to T-Deck, showing that there's gonna be a fire hydrant there, or you know?
I know that it's been submitted to Shady Grove, and I believe we've had Mike Jones's approval on that. But as far as it getting through T-Deck's approval, I don't think I have that yet.
Okay,
But I believe I can get it for you.
okay.
Because the water lines, I think we were going back to Sockless, connecting on and.
You're gonna have to go back down the road a ways to pick up a 6-inch line to come up, because I think there was only like a 4-inch there.
That's, yes.
And so they were gonna extend a 6-inch line up here so that we could get a fire hydrant, which we felt like that we needed with this type of commercial building here.
Yeah.
So that has not been done.
Well-
I don't have T-Deck approval. Like I said, Mike Jones has seen it, but, it's kinda got left at that point.
So I think that, if we move to approve, because like I say, this is revised to a certain extent, I still would like that, statement to be involved in there about the fire hydrant, and to ensure that it is going to, water lines upgraded and installed. Now, that being said, once it's up and installed, you know, there's no way for them to actually check the pressure there and the flow until they actually get it there. So it very well could be, when it gets there, it could be a moot point, in which case then we would just require a letter from Shady Grove saying, we can't supply the flow and the pressure that's required for the hydrant.
Okay.
So at that point, and which is what we have done previously. But, I think that, hopefully we'll be good there.
Yeah, I think you will. I think you've got enough elevation difference from Green Hill tank.
6-inch line?
That it will be an extended 6-inch line to this property, yes. I think he's got ample parking. I don't think that's changed.
There's a lot of parking on the side.
Yes,
I checked his ADA requirements, and they've met those.
yes.
But this is just for
The,
the small site in the lower right-hand corner.
yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes, that's all this is for, yeah. 'Cause
and, you know, and all this over here, there's some bleed over here. This is mainly for the drive-throughs. This here is bleed over from the store.
Okay,
You know, there'll probably be some electric vehicle charging spaces in here too.
okay. We got a
Yeah.
scale there. I'm ready. Okay.
move to approve, contingent on, getting the fire extinguisher.
Fire hydrant.
Fire hydrant.
Yeah, okay,
We'll get a fire extinguisher too.
okay.
I'm sure they'll.
That'd be a lot easier, wouldn't it?
I don't know.
You can have a fire extinguisher out there tomorrow.
Cheaper.
Okay. All right, so I got a proper motion for approval based upon the extension of the 6-inch water line and the installation of the fire hydrant there at the property. So, and a second, okay. Any other discussion before we take a vote? Did you have anything else, Catherine, as far as in regards to this? Like I said-
No, I didn't realize that the whole thing had been, that this was an addition.
Yes, that's okay, because it was revised. All right. Being no more other comments, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is a resolution amending the zoning resolution of Jefferson County, Tennessee, presented by Austin Brooks.
Mr. Chairman, the county attorney still has this. I asked to push it to the next meeting.
Okay, all right, sir. So,
Does that need to be a motion?
yeah, we'll make a motion just to roll it.
I'll move to roll that to the next
Okay,
meeting.
got a proper motion, do I have a second? Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, so done. Okay. The next item is a resolution amending the zoning resolution of Jefferson County, Tennessee regarding a new C3 wholesale and warehouse commercial district presented by Mr. Austin Brooks.
Mr. Chairman, after last month's meeting, Mr. Scarlett had pointed out, and I believe Ms. Baldwin had pointed out, we needed more definitions in our zoning regulations to make this, to help with this zone and would actually help other zones. So we had asked Ms. Baldwin to give us some definitions on verbiage used in the resolution.
Okay.
And we couldn't get that print no bigger.
I think this was the one that was,
Oh, they,
yeah, we corrected it.
I'm sorry. You got it.
Let me find my copy. There's my paper here. So this is for the C3 zone designation.
Correct.
Yeah, last month, we had a couple of discussions about, if you have a C3 area, how would you handle, screening? I'd made a recommendation that for commercial, you would need, your ordinance has a general term called a buffer, and it doesn't really have much detail beyond that. The development criteria for a buffer is in your definition area, so I continued that. I'll have to admit, that's not a great place to have it in the definitions. But, so if you'll look at the bottom of the page, I suggested adding two definitions, one for transitional screening, one for nuisance screening, as opposed to buffer. Transitional screening is where you have an industrial zone district that borders a residential zone district. And so I said, transitional screening is required for commercial office or industrial zone districts, but A1, R1, R2, or RR. They also bumped up the minimum width. I think you had 20 feet. I mean, you had 10 feet. It shouldn't be anything less than 20 feet. I also added a definition for nuisance screening. So you have a lot of, based on your land use pattern in the county, you have a lot of residences that are in your commercial zones. So instead it will not meet the criteria for transitional zoning, transitional screening. So in that event, I added nuisance screening. And nuisance screening is where you have improvements on a commercial or industrial site that are, for lack of a better phrase, unattractive for adjacent residential properties. This would be the requirement for this would be determined by the planning commission, but it would require screening for service functions such as where you store cars or repair cars or truck or outdoor work areas, loading docks. Garbage collection areas should be enclosed by a fence. If you've noticed on the site plan for, the, truck facility, thank you. I checked their detail on their garbage disposal area. It is enclosed within a fence that's, closed. That knocks down on people using it for uses other than, by the business where it's being served. And so I put some criteria in there for that. Another thing is that when you have a garbage collection area, you have to have a concrete, you can't use asphalt in the area of garbage collection. It tends to buckle in really hot summer days. And if you have a large service area, you could screen the whole thing. Screening requirements may not be required where they are not visible from public streets or adjacent properties. One of the things that I added was within the vegetative screen, you can use existing plant material as long as it is protected and is of a plant material that would be a year-round screen. Oh, item 3 is you also don't have anything that states what goes in a vegetative buffer. You have a buffer of a required space, but you don't say what goes in it. So I added suggested plant materials. It has to be evergreen plants that are effective for year-round screening. I just picked up some language from some of my other communities. Evergreen trees, and I named suggested species that serve in this nature. Minimum plant size, I think this has come up before, is that where people have had buffer requirements, there was not a minimum size of the vegetative material. Evergreen trees should be 5 to 6 feet when they go in the ground. You specify heavy sheared. Evergreen shrubs are really good at filling in gaps. And, but if you're going to use them, they should be 18 inches in height. And I also suggested the type of evergreen shrubs that should be used. The item 5 addresses the minimum width of vegetative screens. I did bump that up to 20 feet in width. The vegetative material should be planted on 20-foot staggered centers within that 20-foot width. And if you do 20 foot, that means you've basically got 2 rows. And you do that because when you're planting evergreen materials, everybody thinks you plant it really close. You really don't, because evergreens have a wide spread at their base. If you don't plant them with enough space, it will just choke them out and they'll die. So you plant them every 20 feet staggered, and it gives them a 40-foot growth area. Does that make sense? I should have drawn a diagram. If there is existing vegetation, it can be treated, it can be counted toward this standard. If it's sufficient in size and protected during construction. If it's kind of spotty, you can still use it and just supplement if inadequate as determined by the planning commission. This may be whether you wanted, maybe less, I don't know. But if you're going to start looking, it sounds like a lot of your concerns by the residents are based by the generalized language in your zoning ordinance and by putting in, like I know one of the campgrounds had a buffer requirement. And, I think that, my idea of a buffer or a vegetative material within it and someone else's may be different, so you specify so there's not a pointed discussion at the, during the construction. And it would be included on the site plan. So it's actually good to have it in your definitions. That way, when you refer to it in any of your other zone designations, like industrial or C1 or C2, because this is C3, they would pick up this transitional screening and nuisance screening requirements. That,
Around the whole perimeter.
well, if it is adjacent, it would depend on if it's adjacent, any of those zone districts, A1, R1, R2, or RR.
So if there were commercial and industrial beside of it, you wouldn't need that buffer? Okay.
So what about we talked about the wood fence and being able to use that for parking, and there's nothing addressing that in here.
No, but you also had 100 foot, which,
So if they use the wood fence rather than
Vegetative.
vegetative, thank you. What
you know,
does that
wood
mean?
fences look great the day they go up. A vegetative buffer looks better 2 years, 5 years than it does today. So, and really good vegetative buffers are, they really do serve a great purpose. When you put fences in, they tend to be poorly maintained. If they're wood fences, they're gonna need to be replaced at some point. They fall over. Usually most businesses don't like to maintain them. You don't want them using chain link fences. Chain link fences, if you're, there's a chain link fence that does serve, you see them in industrial areas a lot, and there's a weave through them that's a vinyl or a really thin metal, and over time, those things do not look good. And once again, vegetative materials do a good job, and the longer they're there, the better they look.
My curiosity is, are we gonna apply the same standard to homeowners?
For,
Fences. They don't get to put up wood fences, they don't get to put up chain link fences because they don't look good when they.
well, they're not prohibited. It's just that your standard for transitional or nuisance screening would be vegetative.
Okay.
So you're purely vegetative with no option.
Well, I think that was, as I recall, in your, what was provided, was that there was your side yard setback was 100 foot is required from any lot line for which there is a dwelling unit. Now, that's a side yard setback, that's not a buffer, so you can use it for parking.
And that's the reason I'm asking about all of that, because if you take a perfect lot, 200 feet wide in the width, and you get a 80-some thousand square foot lot, which is the 2 acres, by the time if you have to do these setbacks, that's, you got a small footprint for that 10,000 square foot building and the septic.
And I didn't address the setback at all. 100 foot is a huge setback. I'm not sure that I think that, that's not overreach. What you put in a setback, like any other place, a setback, you can park in it, you can, it's the setback only applies to the building. So any aspect of that required setback, you can use to meet the criteria for, unless you prohibit it somewhere else. Now, I'm not that familiar with your zoning ordinance, so I'm not sure about that one. This is just, I would reduce the setback personally. But within that setback, I do think you should have screening to protect the adjacent properties. A setback doesn't do that. It's just a distance. It doesn't knock off the visual of the use.
You've got, one of the things that's in here is, major and minor auto and truck repair. If I bring a 53-foot trailer in with a semi, and I'm sitting on that 100 thing, I'm sitting on it, I mean, you're, depending on what you're in, or depending on where the building is, that becomes problematic. If I've got 100-foot setbacks.
And again, I didn't, setbacks were in the ordinance
And I understand,
presented.
that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
With all of this, so what's your recommendation on the setbacks? Because you become a really small footprint if you've got to have 100-foot setbacks
I would reduce the setback.
to,
It's not 100 feet all the way around.
If there's a dwelling unit, it's just from a dwelling unit.
if there's something here, here, and here, then you've got 100 foot on three sides. The front's not where you enter, but the setback, that means the building's got to sit in the middle of that thing. They can't offset it, so they can come in there and swing in.
Turning radius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So right now, we've got front 60 feet, rear 20 feet, side 50 feet, provided that a setback of 100 feet is required from any lot line for which there is a dwelling unit located on the adjoining property.
So if we're gonna do a 20-foot buffer with a vegetative thing with screening for nuisance, if we go to a 50-foot setback all the way around, then that you can move the building over there. You've got a 20-foot buffer. You can move the building to one side. I can bring that tractor and trailer in. And I can turn in, if I'm in a truck repair, I've got to turn in the garage.
Mm-hmm. No, you have to have turning movement.
And I've got to, I may come in and I want to drop the trailer over on this side. And they'll end up having a building over to one side.
But now keep in mind that the 2 acres is just a minimum. You
I
know,
understand, but what I'm saying, if they had perfect spot, whatever, if it's 2 acres and that's what they set up, the logistics of where the building sits, or where they can set it, is gonna be pretty impactful if they have the 100-foot setbacks on 3 sides, or even on 2 sides.
I mean, I'm assuming on the site plan that they have taken turning radius into account. And usually in commercial areas like this, they're buying pretty well the exact space that they need and in the configuration that they need. So if you got somebody coming in doing this type of development, I would think that they know when they buy it or carve out the tract that what their turning radius is, and that speaks to width as much as anything else of the site itself.
But typically, if I'm putting in a truck repair, or what, I'm gonna put it in on an accessible corridor, or what do you call it, artery, or
Major, minor, arterial.
okay, so if I'm putting it in on that, there's only so much road frontage that I can get in this county. So if I restrict that lot by putting those 100-foot setbacks, it cuts
only
down
where,
to-
but only where it adjoins. So,
I understand, but there's still only so much property along the corridors that
yeah,
she's got down in here that they've got to be on, that this would go to. I mean, whether it's 92 or 11E, 2570, there's still only so many parcels that's gonna be available down through there. So if I go to 2 acres, and that's what I can carve out, and that's what I want, having the building where I can set it towards one side if I've got to do the vegetative anyway.
so you're saying with a vegetative buffer, rather than 100 feet where it adjoins a dwelling, you'd like to see it at 50.
Well, if you move it to 50, if you're gonna have a 20-foot buffer with
Yeah.
the evergreens, like Ms. Catherine said, you're gonna have a screen there anyway.
Yeah.
So if I'm able to move the building from the center of the property over to this side, then that leaves a pretty good area over here that I can use between those two vegetative buffers.
Yeah,
I mean, it seriously impacts what I can do.
oh, I agree. But I think that to some degree, the consideration for, a zone district like C3, if you're approving it, because at this point, you would have to, it doesn't exist, so it's gonna have to come to this body to get approved, to do a map amendment to C3, and that there would be, ample consideration given to your rezoning property to C3 with a bunch of houses around it. Now, if it's one or two, you know, and I realize with a county this large, you're gonna have that. But, I think that some of that due consideration should be given at the time of rezoning, not at the time of site plan approval. I would hope. Also, if whoever's in the house knows that the rezoning is being proposed, they're gonna come and object at that point. They're not when the site plan is approved, but when the zoning is approved. And hopefully you would do this along corridors. It's just like the one that we just looked at. That almost seems better for C3 than it does C2, which I think is what it is now. Yeah, it is C2. And this is probably more conducive, so you want to use this along your main corridors, but I think at the time that you rezone it, you would take into account where any homes are. You cannot conditionally zone, like you can't say, you can do C3 as long as there's not a house nearby.
Yeah,
That doesn't, it doesn't work.
it helps sometimes.
But a lot of times it's, like of your allowable uses, and I'm looking at this, there's not a lot of, noise, fumes. This is not industrial, this is commercial. And so 100 foot is, I think, a heavy hand, but what you don't want to do is look at it. A lot of people will say, well, it's gonna operate during the day, I'm at work. That's not a concern to me, but I don't wanna see it. And I think you can't, when you look at the value of property tax, look at it from a revenue stream. If you're looking at putting C3 in an area and there's a bunch of houses nearby, you're gonna devalue those houses. When they sell next time, they're gonna sell for less. And at that point, you're affecting your property values and your tax revenue, because of, the severity of the uses. So, I mean, that should be taken into account at the time that you rezone.
If there's some more land adjacent to you, that's zone C, whatever, do they have to have another 50-foot buffer zone between them, or can they share that same?
No, so.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So
What he's saying, if I'm already sitting here C2, and he has his property, he wants to be C3, he's asking, do I have to have a buffer and he have a buffer?
Two buffers to good?
And
No,
the
it's
answer's
only
no.
when, it's
just in these
adjacent
zones.
residential.
Right here,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
it's just in those zones.
So, and you don't have an office district specifically.
no.
So it would just be between any kind, non-residential and residential, basically,
Okay.
is more,
So is it fair to make somebody have that buffer in there and then not require somebody else to put a a buffer around their place.
Well, basically what you're doing is you're creating a new zone here. So anybody that wants to come in and get this zoning, as far as that goes, basically these guidelines are what they're gonna have to follow. And we may say it's fair or not fair as far as that goes, but that it changes all the time. Zoning does and requirements and everything. And that doesn't absolve you just because your neighbor got to do something that you may not get to do something in the future. So, yeah. What this does is this. Somebody says, I want to do an automobile service station. And I said, okay, where can that go? And we're going to say, okay, you can go into a C3 zone. We're going to tell them that. And then they're going to say, well, okay, so what are my requirements? How to make it fit? This is what they're going to be. I only have one thing out of this, and I liked just about everything there, other than the 100-foot, which, okay. But I didn't understand why we limited it to 10,000 square feet. And I looked at some of the things that we had here, like storage building and warehousing and everything. I mean, that 10,000 square feet anymore, that's small for that. And I didn't know if that could be something that is related to, proportional to the amount of acreage that you had. In other words, if I had 5 acres, why would I have to have just 10,000 square feet when I could have more and still meet my setbacks?
So the intention here was, right now, if you have what could be considered a commercial use, a lot of times they end up having to apply for I-1, which is a very heavy use, as you
Yes.
know. And then it causes all these issues, and in some cases they're denied, in some cases they're approved, but regardless, there's lots of heartache in the community, and perhaps we have lost out on some good opportunities in this county because of issues like that.
That's probably true.
So what I was looking at was some way we can get commercial in here, but we don't have heartache and outrage in the community. We can.
I agree.
That's the intent. So, and in my opinion, 10,000 square feet is a lot of building.
It's not.
That's a big
no.
building. I'd like to have 10,000 square feet.
You know, typically when people are coming in and they're usually looking for around 20,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And what that does is it allows them to have storage in their facility, office space in their facility, and then a work area in their facility. So that's why I'm saying I understand 10,000 square feet maybe on a 2-acre building, but I don't understand why that couldn't be proportional if you got bigger acreage. Why you couldn't have a little bit more? Because you're still only going to get what you have up here. So. You can't add any more. You still got to be that same thing. I'm just asking if that could not be proportional. And we could set a max, but the 10,000 I think is that's going to squeeze some of these people for that. So I mean that's just. Other than that, I don't have any other issues with what's there as far as that goes. But
So the setback, the 100-foot setback, and the max 10,000 square feet, you think are too restrictive
well,
potentially?
I think. Okay. I just know because I just see people call all the time looking for, and they're and it's usually I never hear 10,000. It's always at least 20,000 square feet.
For what kind of business?
Well, it could be for storage or warehousing, as far as that goes, and because what we've got here is that basically we're saying that you could have mini storage on these units, which mini storage they're not bad neighbors because typically they're fenced and you don't have day-to-day operations typically in there and they're not a nuisance.
They're quiet.
They're quiet. So, but for 10,000 square feet, there's going to be people who are going to say, you're not making it worth my while as far as it goes. So I'm just asking, if we want to keep the 10,000 at 2 acres, but I'm just saying,
So,
could we not go up if they have more acreage and it be proportional to the acreage? And we could set a
I
max.
still want a max.
Okay.
And you're combining principal and accessory.
Yes. A maximum. So you could have 4 2,500 square foot buildings or.
Are they allowed to make them 2-story?
Let me ask you this, in your C1 and C2, do you have a maximum size in those? Because
We don't.
they are your less restrictive commercial. This is your most restrictive commercial.
Okay.
So it would be, if you're looking at it from the standpoint of these would be the larger users. And you don't have that in your C1 or C2, that's really small. If you're, I mean, you look at a typical Walmart, that's about 175,000.
Bucky's is 74,000 square feet.
Bucky's is 74,000.
And
That's a
example, I mean,
footprint.
If you're talking, one of the things you've got in here is, automobile service stations, gas stations, whatever. So you talk about, if you talk about that, Bucky's is 74,000 square feet down there. So that's a 10,000 square foot.
Where are they putting the Bucky's at over here?
Deep Springs. Or, I mean, 407.
He's just giving you an example.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
I mean, that size right there, that's not a,
Is that the size of the one
that's
that's
the size
on
of one
I-40?
Seville Lexus.
Which is the
70.
largest one in there.
Not anymore.
Is it not?
It was briefly bigger, briefly.
It was briefly, but that always said there's not gonna be one bigger out of Texas. And so he added feet to one down there.
I can believe that.
What was it, 10 feet, 30 feet?
I forgot what he added, but he added to the one down there, so it would be bigger than the one up here.
Yeah, and that's almost all retail. I mean, if,
Yeah.
that's
So-
almost all retail. So if you're looking at wholesale establishments, wholesale warehousing and shipping, which you would think of, these would be at the place where you just rezoned, would be a typical place where this would be a good, C3 would be a good use.
But he would have had to expand it to 2 acres.
He would have had to expand to 2 acres,
Well,
but
and he had the.
He had the land to
12,
do it, yes, yeah.
But with a minimum requirement of 2 acres, you're looking at large sites. And with large sites, especially warehousing, because it's also something that warehousing, shipping or trucking, you get more noise, you get a lot of, the semis are, kind of noisy. They're,
I'll give you an example. The one down there on Whitaker Road, that building's bigger than 10,000 square feet.
The fence?
No, the
Machine shop.
machine shop down there, the guy buys, oversells motors, and I don't know what all he buys and sells, but of course, he went in I-1. If your push was to move him more to this and not have the I-1 there, he couldn't fit it. And all he does is buys overruns and bankruptcies and.
What size building is he
I'd say that thing's 20,000 square
Yeah.
foot.
I can't remember.
It's good size, and he's got an accessory building with it and stuff.
House,
The house is separate.
it's separate,
It's
but
separate, but
it was all one track at one time.
his, of course, his house has got a big garage.
Garage.
Okay. It's a
Uh,
brown building?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right there at Whitaker
It's
Road.
got- There's a giant building and then there's a nice house
Nice,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So that building there, what he does is very
Yeah, I never
low,
knew what that was.
it's very low impact.
Yeah.
He takes orders over the internet, I understand.
I think he buys
Shit.
businesses
He
out,
buys-
and sells them over there.
Buys bankruptcies and people that are in trouble, and then he parts them out. Motors, pumps, stuff like that. So if your push is to move that into something like this, 10,000 square feet won't get it. Cause
So
he's
what are some-
got a building behind it that he come in here and got, here back,
Yeah,
that's
I
another
know.
storage thing.
Yeah, storage, yeah.
I think it should be proportional with your acreage.
So, Catherine, is that common in other
I'll
counties?
be honest, I've never seen a maximum.
Okay.
Usually, especially in the Northeast, I only read articles that, like in, New Hampshire, New England, that area, you don't see Walmarts. And that's because in their zoning ordinance, they've got maximum square footage. But you're talking about C3 is almost a warehousing shipping zone designation, the way I see it. And in that respect, I don't know that I'd have a maximum square footage. It's, you're right about utilization of the site, traffic circulation, you're looking at semis for a lot of the transfer of goods and merchandise. I don't know that I'd have a maximum. And you wouldn't want them to come in and build several buildings unnecessarily as opposed to one really large one. So I'm not sure I wouldn't strike that entirely. Do you have a maximum in any of your other zone districts? You know, there are houses out there 10,000 square feet. Now, they're on multiple stories. That's not their footprint. But warehousing is just always single story. They never stack those. So I guess if this is really a C3 designation, I would strike maximum structure size, and I would reduce the setbacks to 50 feet. And then, now I have to say this, with the buffer so you don't have to look at the thing if you're in a house next to it.
And I think if you go to the 50 feet,
With the vegetative buffer.
then you go to and you do a 20-foot pivot, I think that's a reasonable
That's a happy
compromise.
spot.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable compromise because you've got another 30 feet in that setback. And so I've got 30 feet, and if I wanna go to that, down this side of the building, I need 15 feet anyway or something to drive around and circle the drive.
And again, if you've got a subdivision right next door, something more than just a random house here or there, you won't be rezoning it to C3. I think that would come up during the public hearing and the notices, and the neighbors would come out and drive and say, we don't want this one here. But if you are gonna have it, you still, and I have to admit that I kinda not snuck it in, but by your just having buffer in your definition section and not have performance criteria that's clearly stated and you can quantify, it doesn't do anything. We've already had discussions about it no more
It's
time
not
than I've been
enforceable.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not enforceable. Or it's not, it's your idea of a good buffer and my idea of a good buffer are very different. And after you get a site plan approved is not the time for that discussion.
So another question, Austin. Why have you got prohibited use of value-added processing and product sales?
Because we're talking about in the county, and that would be more than likely on septic. Or you could have a storage facility where there may be no bathrooms at all. That was brought up. I feel like the big issue with that was it was gonna be away from sewer.
So you're gonna have sewer for the other ones, though?
What?
You're gonna have sewer for, anything, the wholesale, the warehousing and all that's gotta have sewer too.
No.
I mean, not sewer, but septic, excuse me. All of that's got to be septic.
Yeah, but you're talking about an office with a half bath or something. You're not talking about a factory turning out lots and lots of waste.
So if they grind wheat, they run a bakery, that's still, where do you put those? Where do you put the ice cream shop? I mean, what zone, if you're not pushing it to commercial, what are you pushing it to? Because we don't have one that you put an ice cream, place to make ice cream or salsa or any of that in right now.
In the county.
In the county. We don't have one. We have derailed A2 and never addressed it. So if we're not doing here, where do we put that?
I'm curious, do you have a definition for value-added processing?
Well, somebody that wants to bring in tomatoes, make salsa.
Okay.
Somebody that wants to bring in,
No, I understand,
Bring in
but do
cream.
you have a definition?
we don't, but we
For
need it in,
that.
we need it in there. Because we can, there's a processing plant for milk in the county is located on a farm. But the caveat is that all the product is produced on the farm, but if he goes away from that, then that's where the trouble begins.
I see.
So if you start out and I'm growing an acre of tomatoes, and I process that, I've got no problem. If I don't have I've expanded, everybody likes it, I started processing more tomatoes, and I run out of tomatoes, I can't grow nothing where I'm at.
So you
If I
bring,
had
so
the
you
first-
truck some in?
The first box of tomato I buy, I'm out of compliance.
Okay.
Give it, and personal example is, we ran a dairy for years. We don't anymore. If I wanted to make ice cream, I can't do it in this county without going to I-1 zone. So if we want these small businesses and we want them to come in, where do we put them? If not in commercial.
So they're not allowable in your industrial zone? Or you don't want them in an industrial
Well,
zone?
if by theory, what Austin's saying, that you want to control that you don't want that, because as you said at the beginning of the meeting, once we zone that C2, then everything that goes with it for now and in perpetuity. So if you want to control that, and you want to set it in a zone, where do we put it? Because if you don't want it in I-1, if you don't want that property zoned I-1,
Right, along with all the other uses in
yes.
I-1 or, yeah.
So that's what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
no, I agree.
What do they do? How do you limit the height of a building? I mean, if it's say they put in a 5-story warehouse.
I'm not sure we have height requirements.
Usually it's dictated by your fire code.
It does. Yeah. We don't have any adopted fire codes.
Okay. Usually it's 35 feet.
It is usually 35 feet, yeah.
The height.
Yeah, unless your fire department has a ladder truck, and then basically, then you can go higher than that. That's typically, I mean, that's the standard.
That's the standard.
So,
And that's where it comes from, the ladder trucks.
Yeah,
Except for now you sprinkle buildings and so they've
I was
kind
gonna
of gotten away
say,
from
can you
that.
have a sprinkler unit in a 5-story?
you could, yeah, and it very well could be that when it's all said and done, depending on what you're doing here, as far as that goes, well, we don't have fire codes adopted, but fire codes would come in and say, yes, you're gonna have to sprinkler this building. Okay, so, that part gets into whenever site plans are submitted and we're looking at all that as far as that goes. So, but unless you just wanna go in here and put in the maximum height of a building in this zone,
I mean, none of those uses are the type that would go vertical,
no, probably not,
just by their nature.
yes,
And it's also very vehicular, oriented.
yes.
So, I don't think you're gonna get a lot of height issues.
The
You
big,
might get might get an office on a mezzanine.
that would be it, that would probably be
Yeah.
what you have there, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to go back to what you were talking about with the square footage being proportional to acreage. Now, Catherine, you had said that you don't really see maximum square footage anywhere.
Not for the building. You do see, building coverage, like lot coverage. Usually a percentage is, you might have a percentage of, you can cover 40% of the legal lot of record with a building. And so there's a rational nexus between the size of the lot and the size of the building, which is kind of what you were talking about. So as opposed to having, if you got a business that's coming in and is buying 50 acres, you're still limiting them to 10,000 square foot buildings, but they just bought 50 acres. You ought to let them put whatever size building they want to on it, but they could only cover like 40% of it. And typically, 40% will leave you enough room for turning radius for semis, except parking. Usually, if you're using semis, you've got a semi storage area.
Somewhere down in the driveway.
Yeah. So that's a good suggestion. Maybe to satisfy your concerns is strike the maximum square footage of the building and just say you could only cover 40% of the legal lot of record.
My concern, so like if I went and bought 50 acres, if I started filling that up with buildings, at some point I would start to transfer into what could be considered more of an industrial use.
But the uses would still be dictated by your
By the
allowable
zone.
Yeah,
uses.
once you're there. More than likely, if that were to happen, they would probably come back and request a zoning, maybe that would be less restrictive than
Like
what the.
industrial
Yes.
space.
Or they would have started with the
Yeah,
industrial.
and started to begin with, But here's what happens though, sometimes people get in, they start into a business and, and they start out small and then the next thing you know, then they're growing.
And that's what you want.
And you want that to happen as far as it goes, but then all of a sudden, you don't want them to have to run out of room and then them be stuck, okay? And that, it can still happen as far as it goes, but if they've got the acreage for expansion, then, they should be able to, state says you should be able to expand your building, So if you do it, and you do base it on that, and say you go cover 40% of the legal record, now let me ask you a question. The 40%, you're just saying that is the building footprint. In other words, parking and all that would not be included in the 40%, okay?
In fact, if you make it 40%, you've got 60% of the lot for a 20-foot buffer.
Yes.
Whatever parking requirements you have. Usually parking, especially for warehousing, the building, and I haven't checked your parking requirements, probably need to look at that, but usually your parking requirements assume in a warehouse that you've got a certain percentage of office, but you're looking at a huge building because you've got materials stored in it, not the activity of the individuals on site. Most of that activity is outside.
Yeah.
But we could come back and look at some uses elsewhere and see how they've handled it. But I would definitely strike the maximum building and look at a percentage coverage of the lot. And that establishes a real relationship between the size of the lot and the size of the building. And it's not arbitrarily 10,000 square feet. And I think 10,000 square feet for the uses that you're proposing is way small.
Okay. Could you look into that for us, the percentage of the lots, and see what some other areas are using? And, Mr. Chairman, with these proposed definitions, that would be separate from the C3 resolution, right? Would that need to be its own resolution to add them to our zoning regs?
If you've got your zoning ordinance open,
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in a garbage ordinance. It's just that you call them out as separate sections. And I'll be honest, at this point, we need to, Stephanie and I had this discussion today. We need to agree on the language and then look at the formatting of it. But no, I'd put it all in the same thing because it's all going in the zoning ordinance. And I didn't do stuff like strike the current word buffer and insert transitional screening and nuisance screening. So
Okay.
we would, once we get Gary on the language, we can clean up the form
Okay.
of it.
I don't know if this would need to be an emotion or not, but I would like, if you could come back next month with the C3 document, but adding in the buffer zones like we've discussed with the 50 feet and then the vegetated buffer. That seemed to be agreeable.
I think that's a reasonable offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we could,
Can you say that again?
striking the 100 feet,
Okay.
and the way you have it written here where the,
I highlighted it because I thought it was
yeah.
a lot.
Okay. And then adding in the definitions and the vegetative the 20-foot vegetative buffer,
Okay.
and start getting that compiled into to this resolution.
Yeah, and so you could just say side yard setback is 50 feet, accessory building, actually, it sounds like this accessory buildings can't be in the front yard. You know, commercial, like if you had a gate and you had a gatehouse or a guard, that's an accessory building. It would be in front. I know y'all struggle with this on residential, have people putting the garages in the front yard.
Well,
I don't see it as necessary here.
if we strike that, can't we figure that out during the site plan deal? And just say, you know, if they want to put, let's take a lumber yard, 84 lumber or whoever, blanking with, they want to build a building and they want to put the lumber storage up front. We say, no, it's got to go in the back. But you can put the guardhouse up front.
Oh, and I was just using guardhouse as
But
an
I
example.
think it's a great example, but just go ahead and strike that accessory building. We can handle all of that in the site plan.
Well, and all of this should be based on the functionality of the site. You want it as highly functional as possible. You can't determine that by an ordinance. Only the individuals in that business can determine what those if you're looking at warehousing, everything's going to be accessory and smaller. Because usually you look at the accessory buildings as the smaller buildings. And the functionality of it, the functionality of the lot and the use should dictate the location of the buildings, not arbitrarily. So I would strike 2.
Okay.
And you don't even have to say principal building, just say, or you could say principal and accessory buildings, front 60, rear 20, side 50.
Okay. Yeah, what I would like to see is where you've got like the suggestions over here and the additions of the definitions, and then we have this, we could put them together and
Yeah.
before we advance it.
Okay.
And then if you could come back with some recommendations on the, as opposed to the maximum structure size, the percentage of the lot.
Okay.
Does any of that need to be in the motion?
No, I mean, we're not approving it. I mean, if you want to put it in the motion, that's actually a question for the chairman.
Well, you can make a motion to roll this to the next meeting with those items to be added.
Okay.
Okay, if you want.
Well, I'm gonna ask if you're doing that, I'd like to see value added processing product sales struck out of that prohibited use.
I would like to see.
And the definitions added to our zoning ordinance as to what defines value added products
Okay.
or processing.
Okay.
So that would need to be on next month's agenda then for that, in case this board wants to adopt that definition.
Correct.
Okay.
So you make ice cream?
Yeah,
I'd like to
okay.
What's that farm in Knoxville?
cruise.
Cruise, they've got a big store on Market,
How did-
no,
how
on
did
Gay
they-
Street.
How do
Yeah.
they do that?
It's on farm.
Okay, so they got.
Part of it is, their subsidy, their satellites aren't on the farm.
No, the sales are not, but
But,
the,
yeah,
where they make the
make it,
thing.
yeah.
Like Stewksbury?
Yeah, and the milk that they're making it from comes from
Yeah,
their farm.
yeah.
It's, the problem becomes if you step outside that, and you can't have, either doesn't have, you
What do you-
don't have that product.
What do you
or
mean if you step outside that?
Like us, we ran a dairy, I've got a facility there, I've got all the coolers, I've got everything else. But because I don't have the milk in my possession, it does not come from our cows or my farm.
Because you're not producing the milk.
I'm not
It's
producing
not your-
milk.
Okay.
I can't produce ice cream. I can't,
In the A1 zone.
in a A1 zone.
Yeah.
I can't produce it anywhere unless I'm rezoned to I1 to food processing.
Is that something that's just a mission from your zoning ordinance, or is that a
It's-
typical,
No,
dealing with
it's just-
agricultural?
No, it's just the way that ours happen to be road is there's no allowance to, if Miss Sue's got a great salsa recipe and she wants to come up there and say, hey, if you'll make this for me, and me and her go into partners, unless I grow all the tomatoes or she
On
does.
site.
On site. I
You
can't do it.
So maybe that's something for a later date, but to, like an industrial, usually, some zoning ordinances will, an industrial use, they will allow you a sales and showroom,
Well,
as long as
we
it
can-
occupies a certain,
We can, if I get zoned I1, but the whole premise behind this, from what Austin is saying, is to be able to do this without zoning it industrial and the baggage it comes with.
right, okay.
What about the other ingredients? Where would you get your sugar and?
Well, you can do that, it's just it's what you're doing, it's what you're processing. You can add any ingredient to it that's not grown or there, but it's the primary thing, the tomatoes, the wheat, the corn, the milk, because that's the product you're adding value to. You're not adding value to the sugar because you're having it's an additive.
Okay.
We good? Okay. Mr. Chairman, I move to roll this to the item E to
Okay. A motion to roll in a second. Discussion, understand what we're doing? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. There's some things in our packet here, and I guess these were here for discussion, but pull this one out, right here.
Well, that's, so, I had suggested, and you've had on your previous, agendas, a occupancy permit, so that you can ensure that your commercial site plans are built according to your approved plan by this body. And with the understanding that, you don't have, staff to handle that kind of load, this gentleman here suggested that, is there a
You're
way?
using that term very loosely.
Yes, that's true. This was one of the things that, I gave you two things on this. One is a zone amendment that would establish a procedure for issuance of an occupancy permit, and you have that. And then, I just did that thinking that that would be helpful to see what a certificate of compliance looks like.
Okay. So, I read through this. I think it covers everything that we would have on our site plans that we would need to make sure that it's approved. And this is done by a professional. It's no cost to the county. The county's requiring the developer to basically do this, and it's for site plans and subdivisions as well, as far as that goes. But do we need to get this we need to get this on the agenda for next month so that we can vote and take action on it, correct?
Yes, so one is and I think on your agenda.
One correction on this one, before we get into this. Miss Catherine, down in C. I'm having difficulty finding everything. On this one.
This is item,
Item C, temporary occupancy permit.
Yes.
Okay.
In red there, where she's added that and struck her, it needs to be 1.5 times, not 1.5%.
Yeah.
okay. Let me,
Just-
I see that, top. Sorry. Okay.
Because 1.5% probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
wouldn't go very far.
Would be in the
Oh,
hole.
whoa. The building official shall set the amount of the security based on,
1.5 times the estimated cost, not 1.5%. Okay. Yeah.
And that's what our standard has been for ever to do as far as putting the bonds is 1.5 times, and that gives us a buffer for all of that.
and another thing is that, if on the ordinance itself, you would ask for as-built utility documents to be submitted prior to issuance of occupancy. So I added, now that's not in that, that's in the ordinance.
Okay.
I added it as item E. And these are all things for your consideration tonight. They're not, I put it on there for discussion.
Right.
I'm like Mr. Terry, I like this where they've got the stamps over here and they've got to come down and it's got to be done by a professional. It takes the burden off us. We don't get, if somebody comes back.
Takes the burden off them too.
Takes the burden off them. If somebody says, hey, I did do that, I'm gonna sue you, sue your engineer.
Right.
Because he's the one that didn't let you do it.
Now, and I will say this, in terms of who you're allowing to do your sealed site plans, I'm a firm believer, licensed engineers, not surveyors, not architects,
For site plans.
for site plans.
Yes, I think that's.
Because the architectural, that's actually the only person licensed by the state that can do that kind of work.
And I think that's great because it takes all the burden, it takes the workload off them, it takes the,
So at the same time, we need to amend your ordinance to require an engineer seal on all site plans. You have surveyor,
Yeah, that's what we have now, right, survey?
Yeah, okay,
and it should be an engineer.
okay.
So,
Yeah,
want me to add that too?
okay. So, look, you've got, when you were bringing up about the occupancy permit in here, okay? So, when we have buildings that basically that have come in on a site plan, just about, I'd say 9 times out of 10, those buildings are commercial buildings.
Oh, yeah, that's the only time you require them.
But Jefferson County doesn't require a certificate of occupancy on commercial buildings.
We don't even do inspections.
They don't even do inspections.
This is irrelevant
Irrelevant, okay.
to that. If you don't, you're approving a commercial site plan, you're approving a commercial site, an industrial site. How are you ensuring that that plan that you approve gets implemented on site? The building codes, and I know you don't administer commercial codes, correct?
Right.
That's building codes.
We don't have any.
You don't have any.
Commercial,
And
yes.
this is, they're certifying construction of the site according to the plan that you approved.
Right, there, as far as the actual site. But what it's got in here, any building or structure. And so, I'm just saying typically, we would, the county doesn't require that to go to that step. Now, basically what we're saying is on site plan, we could go out and we could verify that, yes, this is where the building's going and they have started construction here for this building and look at everything else, unless we want to wait the building is completed and get the site plan as far as that goes, or get that compliance at that point in time. But I'm not sure is who's going to give them a certificate of occupancy there because Jefferson County really can't give them one for the building because they didn't inspect the building. Now, the state of Tennessee, if the state of Tennessee State Fire Marshal's Office comes in, they can get a certificate of occupancy from
So
there.
does anybody inspect any of your, any interior, any, no electrical by the state?
Electrical, Appalachian does that.
But nothing,
Yeah, I think they never did adopt.
they can't, yeah, they didn't, we didn't, the codes aren't adopted, okay,
Yeah,
so.
and once again, these are not applicable to the building codes, because
Okay.
that would be in your freestanding, and I don't know how you codify stuff at the county level of that nature. But planning commission has no purview over the interior of the building.
No, they don't, no.
The only thing you have purview over is the site itself and the engineering of the site. So since this is going in the zoning ordinance, which is the planning commission's authority, now maybe I need to change the no occupancy permit should be. This will require you to institute much as you issue a building permit.
I don't, but the building inspector does.
Okay, then he would be issuing an occupancy permit.
Okay, so, one other scenario, okay. So for instance, we have a development's come in, it's the subdivisions, which is gonna have water, drainage, all the amenities that need to be added into their streets and everything else, which they could go and the street department guy says the streets are good, the utility company says they're good and everything else, and the drainage, and so he certifies all of it, is gonna certify that. But if somebody comes in and they're going to, place in a performance bond, and we have that in place, when does the compliance come in? Because once you give them, once they put that performance bond up, then basically they can start actually selling the property. Because they can record the plat and sell it. All right, so so the improvements aren't completed yet, so when does the compliance come in? When does he have to verify?
We're talking about apples and oranges. These are commercial, this is a permit for commercial properties. What you're talking about is a subdivision of residential property.
Yes, and that's what I was
So if
hoping
you-
that this would cover as well.
It can, but it doesn't.
Okay,
Because to add this for your subdivision process, we would have to amend your subdivision regulations.
okay.
So how do we do that? Because this model of having the engineer certify that basically gets us as built. It guarantees that we get what we see.
Right. So, we'll have to amend your subdivision regulations to put the requirement in that. It's a different process, and it's actually rests solely with the planning commission. This, as a zoning, this is discretionary, so it goes to your legislative body.
Yeah.
Amending the subdivision regulations rests strictly with this body by state law.
Yeah.
So if you want to put it in there, we can certainly do that. It's a different animal.
I know, but I think it still goes hand in hand. As
It
far
would
as
be
that goes.
good to do them both at the same time.
I agree. Because basically, the one with the subdivision, it does not have to go before the board of mayor and alderman. We just make that amendment and we change our sub-guidelines. This is because it relates to site plans. It will be under zoning, so it will have to go and be approved.
So it would be like the deal with the lots where we made.
See, like, I mean,
Yeah.
this would have to be customized for subdivision regulations.
It would, it was.
And, I think I misunderstood because I added in here as-built utility documents, and you're wanting them for your subdivisions.
Well, I'm just saying.
But I did put it in, but it makes sense to some degree because when we looked at, you asked for details on a 6-inch water line.
Well,
And what I said was any utility improvements necessary to serve a commercial site shall be sealed as built utility documents to county staff prior to issuance of final permit. That may need to come out and be addressed differently.
okay. Well, I understand that this basically covers site plans right here. But I would like something similar to that that goes along as well. I guess the thing is this, is that, you know, we know that basically if the water system has been installed, that it's been approved, okay, from that standpoint. But it would be nice to have a signature from the water supplier saying that, hey, it's in, it's good. All right, and then the same thing is that we know that basically for the septic systems that we're gonna have environmental here, they're already gonna sign off. They're gonna say up front, they're good to go on that. The big thing typically is the roads. With the road department, they check those as it's going in, and then they will come in, and once he signed that plat, from that standpoint, then he's telling us that the plan is good, but then we may need for him to come back and say, okay, the as-built is good as well. But the big thing to me, a lot of times, and this is the hardest thing for us to address, is drainage.
On your subdivisions?
Well, we have a plan, that they will submit a drainage plan as far
They
as
don't
that goes.
put it in.
Well, I'm not saying they don't put it in, but we don't have the expertise here, the professionals, to go out there and verify that they did what they were supposed to do. And that's why I want that to be in this, to put the onus back on them, saying, okay, you designed it, and this guy built it, but he didn't build it the way it was designed.
You know, the other thing that is really beneficial about this is that the developer has the engineer come out periodically and look at it to make
Yes.
sure, because you're dealing with a contractor.
That's typically what
And-
happens. The contractor's out there well, all grading contractors aren't the same.
And you know, if you got a good topographic survey, a lot of times the new grading equipment, you can plug that in and that sucker will grade the thing
Yeah, well.
according to the approved plan and will get the topo right on the money.
Okay.
But that's the new grading equipment. There's a lot of these guys don't use that.
Okay.
You want that as a motion to put that on the agenda?
I think so, because there'll be two different items. One will be for a zoning, change the zoning resolution. The other will be for subdivision guidelines. So I'll just tell her to put that on there for next month's agenda to address.
Do you want that in the motion? Or are we good just to?
I think we're good. We're just good. We'll be good there.
Now, you're talking about a lot of stuff here.
I know.
So,
Well,
I think we should, maybe finish one and get it
okay.
to a point before we, not that, this is pretty, well, the form is easy. Amending your subregs, we gotta make sure we get that language the way you want it.
Okay.
And so,
The important one is to get this, and then if the subdivision regulations rest solely with us, then when you get it done, we'll preview it, we'll move it
Okay.
through.
Much quicker.
We
So if
don't
you-
have to wait on the
You-
commission, we don't have to.
you still have to do a 30-day notice of
Yeah,
approval.
but I mean, we hold a hearing out.
So-
But what I'm saying is, we can do it
Yeah.
as opposed, so this one should be first.
Yeah, well, here's the thing is that more than likely is that since this has to go to commission, and we're not gonna look at it till next month, it won't be till January before it's even
Yeah.
there. So we've got some time to play with this, and then we will, so, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, one thing, the ordinance will go, or the resolution will go to the county commission. This is a form for the staff. I never codify forms.
They don't have.
Okay, so,
We can approve that?
Don't
Well-
you, I mean, do you have do you have a form, your building permit form
Yeah, they
sent to
have
your
one, yeah.
county commission?
Gosh,
But
it's-
you don't have it approved by your county commission.
I think County Commissioner wrote them in 2008, to be honest with
The building permit form?
you. Yeah, they do.
So-
Chairman.
okay.
Well, we can discuss that.
Okay, all we need is,
They have to do it.
well, somewhere in here, somebody's gonna have to
Yeah,
sign their name
okay.
to this, and that's, that this is our requirements. In other words, if they give us a checklist down through here saying, hey, all this was done, that's where it goes, and they sign this right here. What are we gonna give them? A certificate of compliance?
You're gonna give them a certificate of occupancy. This is just something for the engineer to,
Checklist.
Yeah.
But you see, I guess my thing is, when you talk about a certificate of occupancy, what I'm thinking is when I give that to somebody, I'm telling them that the building itself can be used. And,
So you want to change the phrase occupancy permit to something else?
to a certificate of compliance, which states that the improvements that were sent to us on the site plan have been completed as they were designed and as they were presented to us. Because I can't go into the building part because inside, because
No, I see
what does
what
that matter to us on the inside? It really
It
doesn't
doesn't.
matter, yeah.
Okay.
But what
well,
it does is that we're gonna see for parking, we're gonna see ADA requirements out in the parking lot, we're gonna see,
But what you are going to see is placement of the building as per the engineered plan.
that's correct, which means
Okay,
that it
so
is set within the
I can
setbacks.
rework this.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
yeah. Then it-
Rework this.
And I think then that basically we could just say, okay, we are now giving you a certificate of compliance that,
Does that come from you all?
well, it's a good question.
Who's it come from?
What?
If you make it a certificate of, if you make it not a certificate of occupancy, but a certificate of compliance, that's what I say the word, then it can come from the zoning thing and be signed off by them rather than the building inspector, not.
Zoning, by pop.
We approve, zoning will approve it.
Because we're the ones that control the site plan.
Well, you have no authority
No,
on
we
a
don't.
day-to-day
what-
administrative process.
We don't, that's what I'm saying.
So it's either it's got to be somebody, and
So if we approve the site plan, it comes through and they present it to us. Then if the engineer stamps all the way down on what the paper the form you got, and everything's there, then would it not lend itself, if it's compliance, would it not lend itself to go back?
And I can sign it after the engineer signs it,
Yeah.
right?
what is kind of missing piece is, and I have to admit, I'm kind of getting accustomed to your administrative process, but
Are you saying it's different?
it's different from what I'm accustomed to. But, I'm a big believer in thresholds. And, what do they need from you to use the site? And if it's not a sign-off on a release of some sort, what's gonna make them bring that form in?
So in other words, basically then we could require them to have to put a performance type bond,
Make them give us some money.
make them give us some money. And the key is how much money we're gonna make them give us
A
because,
percentage of the total cost of the site improvement.
yeah,
And you could ask for an OPC from the engineer at
Yeah.
the site plan
yeah.
frame.
So, yeah,
We do that for roads.
well, I'm just saying that,
Do you administer
Well,
the
I keep
sureties
bonds.
for you hold the
I
bond?
do.
It'd be the same thing.
yeah.
It'd be the same thing. But it would be issued when they get their building permit. They would have to post a form of surety. And you would release that surety when they bring you a certificate of compliance. Now, we're in some uncharted territory here.
But it's good to look at what's the repercussions are when somebody comes along, then all of a sudden we're saying, well, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, so what? What are you gonna do? Slap me on
You
the,
have no,
Yeah.
no,
yeah.
you have no
So
recourse.
basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna say, here's our recourse. you
So
know.
do you charge for a building permit now, and how do you base that
Yeah,
fee?
I don't, zoning don't.
Well, okay,
We got
but
building, yeah.
for the building permit, how do they determine the cost
Square
of the
footage.
permit?
Square footage.
So there's a square footage.
That's a formula. for the
So
square
it's a sliding scale based on the
Yeah.
square footage of the building, all right. So we'll have them post a surety based on the square footage, and we'll have to make it high enough that it hurts them if they don't come get it.
Yeah, that's it. If you don't, they'll walk away.
Yeah, they won't.
Well, then the county gets the money.
Yeah. But then we gotta turn around and try to fix the problem, and
Not necessarily. You can't go out and fix their site, it's private property.
that's true. That's true, yeah.
But you can make it hurt.
Yeah. Okay, okay. All right,
What would you say for using,
Nothing,
nothing.
utilities is it?
nothing. That's why we're gonna have to set the amount high enough to get the engineer back on site to certify it's accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And if the engineer does not certify that, Appalachian will turn electricity on.
Well, I mean,
I mean, that's typically, or a bank will not transfer their financing from a construction loan to a permanent loan. So if you can get your banks to set up and pay attention.
yeah.
Um,
And most of them for that kind of money will.
yeah, because they'll have to, if you get them, if you do surety, they have to make it a LOC, so the bank will have to pay it out if they don't come and get it. Y'all have hit on my strong suit. I'm maniacal as hell when it comes to this stuff. All right. I'll take care of that and change this for next time.
Okay.
If I can remember, Stephanie, we need to make sure I get a list of everything you said. All right.
All right. So there was one other thing in our packet, and I don't know if we were supposed to address this tonight or not, but it's in regards to short-term rentals. Okay, so I have a question here. I don't think this should come through planning.
It can't. It
Yeah.
doesn't.
Okay.
I think, I actually, I've listened to the gallery here, and it seems to be a burning issue. You also are missing out on a lot of revenue, especially if there are as many short-term rentals here as reported to be.
Who does it go through?
It goes through the county commission. So I drafted that, when the legislature, Tennessee state legislature enabled government jurisdictions to, regulate short-term rentals. Both CTAS and MTAS put out standardized ordinances to do so. And, I've done about 5 of them. The communities love them. So I just took the template by CTAS and adjusted it a little bit. I think it's now, I'll say this, at least at the other jurisdictions I've worked in, they had the planning commission just lend their expertise to language. Is this
Have you done the whole
one?
county yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's,
Just
as far as the implementation goes, you kind of can do a super search of when the tax bill goes to the lot of record, or when the tax bill goes somewhere else. If the tax bill, you could ask whoever your financial officer is to do a super select of all the
right on time.
where there's a disparity there, and you get you a list,
Yeah.
and you start,
Well, we
you
just
send out a notice to them.
implemented it in Danbridge. We got it up and going and everything else. I don't have a tremendous amount there as far as that goes. We had some pushback a little bit, but all in all, it's worked out pretty good. The big thing is finding somebody here, because when you look at this, are you going to have any kind of inspections? And basically, our inspections are pretty basic. The only thing we look is make sure that we have smoke alarms in all our bedrooms and one in the kitchen and a fire extinguisher.
You don't check their insurance?
No.
Well, you would just be telling them, you give it to us.
Yeah, so, well, that could be the case, and then we're required that they have an active business license.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we broke it down into whether they was owner occupied, owner lived in the county, or the owner was, lived, out of county. And then if they lived out of county, we made them have an
Somebody
agent.
local.
Local, that we wanted somebody we could pick up the phone and call.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is totally a licensing program.
Yeah.
It would be, go to the county commission. The revenue pays for itself. And, at least everywhere I've done it, it's a great program. And especially if you're heavy in the short, if you have, I mean, you got 2 lakes in the county. I bet there's just.
I mean,
You might as well use it to your advantage, and especially, if they get 2 complaints against them in 1 year, they get their license pulled, and you report them to either Verbo or Airbnb, and they jerk them off their website.
So what kind of, in the other ones you've done, and you said you've done another county, what kind of fees are you talking about in the other county?
we did 300.
Did you?
$100 for administrative, and then $200 went to the fire department to go out and do the inspection, which then that money was like a donation to the fire department.
Yeah, that's good, that's good. I had one community set it at 1,000, and the state said that was too.
You have to be,
So
you have to be careful, because the
where's
state.
the point they don't say too high?
I think they dropped it to 500.
Okay.
500.
I'm just curious of where that is if they don't say too high.
And it probably, to some extent, you could do a sliding scale and base it on the number of bedrooms. Because I bet if you got lakefront housing, you're looking at 4 or 5 bedrooms. I mean, the last time I rented one, actually, I just came back from vacation Sunday, and we'd rented a 4-bedroom. As opposed to, a 1-bedroom. It could be based on the number of, and you also, there's some, and even, I don't know how much you've looked at it, but there's some language in there, if it's a 1-bedroom house, you can't have 10 people staying in it.
Yeah,
The occupancy is
you
based
can
on
limit that
bedrooms.
as far as it goes. The other thing too is that if the square footage of the home exceeds over 5,000 square feet, or you want more people, or over 5 bedrooms as far as that goes, then it's a whole different animal. It's supposed to fall under state fire marshal guidelines, just like a hotel, which means that they would probably have to have sprinkler systems in the whole 9 yards. Yeah, we do. They're out there, and they're probably not in compliance, but that's, the state fire marshal's guidelines kick in at a certain point in time, even though we may say, okay, we can limit the number of people stay and the number of bedrooms and things of that nature. But the state fire marshal's office, they're gonna tell you, when you've got too many people and when you got too big of a home. So now, that being said, I don't know who's gonna monitor that. Who's gonna measure it?
Well, keep in mind, there's 2 sources of revenue on this. You get the licensing fee, and that's a yearly fee. You also, your comptroller, your finance officer notifies the state, and you get heads and beds, just like you do hotel motel tax. So it establishes 2 separate sources of revenue for the county.
Yeah.
And at that point, you can hire somebody to do it, or expand staffing.
Well,
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, when I heard that y'all didn't do it, it was like, so I actually sent this to, I didn't mean it for your eyes, but I
Well,
can
I was in
understand
there
him
and I
asking
just.
for your input.
Okay, I saw it, and, so I've gone through it, and I know sort of how the process works, but I'm just saying that, right now, I'm probably at 99% compliance, people have
Yeah.
complied. And some people, here's the thing to offer, as an incentive that we offered was that, okay, you come in compliance and everything else, on our website, we're gonna put you down as listed as a preferred.
County certified.
Yeah, town certified place to stay, and so, but, well, what we don't know is, and here's the issue is we know we have them out there and everything else, and we know that they're already supposed to be paying the hotel motel tax, but we have no way of knowing if they're actually doing that or not. Because we just get a big lump check in from the VRBOs or the things, and they won't break it down. And they send it to the state sends it to us. They won't break it down where that money came from.
Right.
And VRBO says, I guess they're not obligated to tell us. So,
They will be now.
you think so?
Well, by this, they have to have a license.
Okay.
And if not, you can, as a governmental entity, notify them that they're out of, that particular site is out
I
of
got you,
compliance.
okay,
And, you know, it's one of those things that once it's up and running, the bugs just work out
yeah.
of itself.
Could this body send that to county commission?
But we don't have to. County commission, this is totally county commission driven right here. It's totally, as far as
Just
that
say,
goes.
could we send it to them to ask them?
Because when I did it before, we didn't even go through planning. It was just basically, it was
Straight to council.
straight to council. Because it was done as an ordinance.
Yeah, like I said, I sent it to the mayor and I think I CC'd you on it.
I'm just saying to get the ball rolling in county commission, if we go ahead and make a motion and send it.
And it's not,
Well, we could do it next month. I don't know, because we wasn't on our agenda tonight. We can,
Commissioner, don't you?
What's that?
You know, Commissioner, you can call, can't you?
well, I mean,
Not one will call me back.
it would just barely mean for us as a recommendation, is what it would boil down to. But we didn't put it on our agenda to do even to make a
We're on other
motion.
business.
Well, I just had a lady talk about adding things to the agenda.
and I think there is a state law that you can't add stuff on the agenda and vote.
Right, so,
And that is, the last legislative session, I think, the state made that. But you can discuss things.
yeah, you can discuss it. I mean,
And I should say that most places that
I do have
I've
another
done
motion
this,
for you, which is on the agenda.
they ask the planning commission to just vet it.
okay.
But it needs to go through the.
But you have no
legislative
approval
body.
you have no
But it needs to go
approval.
through the legislative body first to do
Absolutely.
that.
Oh, to vet it for you, yeah.
Yeah, we can't do it arbitrarily.
You can't take it on
It's
yourself.
like the commission telling us, we can't approve stuff for the school board until they act.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, so, that being said, I know that was part of our discussion, land use plan and possible rezoning, was some of the things that we talked there as far as that goes. I think we should move on to any other business. Do we have any other business?
No.
Okay, then that brings us to our last item on there,
Mr.
which is
Chairman, I
adjournment.
move to adjourn this meeting.
And that's a proper motion. And second. All in favor?